Hi, I'm Rachel Losser, founder and managing partner of Losser Consulting Solutions, and you're listening to Big Project Energy. The podcast where we talk about controlling chaos, managing teams, and driving real project success. So today I'm sitting down with Joe Ciway, the former director of product management at Weber, and coincidentally my former boss. So I'm super excited to talk to you, Joe. As a product development leader, Joe has a very strong background in cross-functional team leadership, marketing, R&D, engineering, strategic planning. He is known for driving high impact product initiatives and aligning stakeholders across all levels of an organization, and he's an absolute badass in his own right. So, welcome to Big Project Energy, Joe.
I am so happy to be here. Rachel, you are great and awesome. So this is fun. It's funny. The other
I'm
podcast I was like talking to is about guitars and heavy metal, which couldn't be a bigger 180. So this is kind of fun.
no, we I like actually think that's important to mention
Yeah.
because you're a man of many talents. I did want to, sort of get into what your project management origin story is because I don't know if we've ever really talked about that, and so many people just kind of stumble into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine is a little bit interesting. I was in like a technical, like let's call it like a technical customer service sales role at a company called Life Fitness Hammer Strength. They make all the, if you're a gym rat, you probably know the equipment, because it's like I would call it the Mercedes-Benz BMW of fitness equipment. It's at the high-end clubs, and maybe they'll use stuffs at low-end clubs. But I got a shot from a guy named Ken Laughlin. So if he actually hears this, big shout out to him, who took a chance on me to start developing. It was kind of like a internal process to order accessories, kind of like mapping out like think of like an Oracle ERP process. And then from that, I actually managed a consumer cross trainer line, this is back when they used to have the 30 pin Apple connector, and then moving to the Lightning. That was like, a big shift in the world. Um, Really, really cool because it got me a taste of product development, and from like a mechanical, electrical, software. Like I was thrown right into that world. So a lot of people start with like some kind of hard good. I was thrown into like, here's a really complex product and it's built overseas, kind of figured out. We were kind of doing this refresh. It was kind of fun. From there, I just managed more and more complex products with them, where I did, whether it was a console refresh, doing like the UI UX design, working with a third party to kind of white label a product for them. And then they also had a couple acquisitions. So I managed projects where it was like, hey, we acquired this other company. We want, our technology on their product, and we want their product with our name on it. And just these huge kind of crazy initiatives where you just jump in head first and you just figure it out, and, make a lot of friends and have a lot of fun on the way. Product development's great. I love it. And then from there, then I moved to Weber, due to some changes in personnel at Life. And it was a great journey at Weber too, coming from, I mean, talk about, and we were both there. I mean, from a private company to a public company, back to a private company to a merger. I mean, it's what some people see in their entire careers. We saw in a span of a couple of years. So that's a little bit of the background.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually want to commend you. So, this is kind of a weird story how I ended up working under Joe. But when I had started on the project management team, Joe is my boss. And I want to talk about the transition of you transitioning a project to me because I feel like that could have been someone's worst nightmare, like taking
Yeah.
over a project from their boss. And you handled it with such grace. Can you just talk a little bit about like what is your like leadership philosophy and just I'll just give some context, but basically we're working on launching grills and accessories, and I ended up stepping into this project management team and literally picking up the project that Joe was managing, and had to transition that work. And so yeah, just talk a little bit about all those things.
Yeah. So we were working on a really It was actually, I would probably say it was one of the biggest projects in the company at the time. It was refreshing a product line that I think was dear. The last one didn't perform well. This was going to be our kind of our first shot of doing something new and great. And Rachel came in at a time where I had to step up and manage the whole team of PMs. Plus, we were doing the NPD process, if you remember at that time. So we're redoing the entire way we make product. I'm passing this project over to Rachel, and I think the most important thing for my leadership side was understanding and right sizing the projects to the people and their capabilities without overloading them. I think um, a famous line is like, project managers are a dime a dozen, but a good one is like, hard to find. And if you got a great one, put them on a good product, but don't make them be able to succeed. And so I think giving you that project, you were able to understand pretty quick, like the hardware software side was, and I think I kind of gave you a heads up, like, hey, we did all the legwork, right? We've got it's 70% there, but this other 30% is going to be chaos. So this is where you need help. But I also knew from my perspective, like just focus on that. Don't work on these other three projects. And we kind of divvied out the workload for my side to make sure you could be successful. I mean, that's what anybody wants, right? You want to be successful.
Yeah, I do think though, like a big part of the success of that transition is probably just attributed to how you are as a person and just operating from such a place. We've talked about it before, but
Thanks.
from
Yeah.
such a place of like mutual respect. And, I feel like you really operate as a true servant leader when you're dealing with the team. Kind of talking about all of those things and right sizing, like, can you talk a little bit more about your actual thought process? Like, how do you actually like feel out the team and actually
Yeah.
make those decisions?
Wow, that's a great question. So I would kind of say I'll take a step back. I think one from project management, you really got to look at the leadership team. Like it's how does an organization look at project management and their role? Because sometimes you have companies where the leadership team has a certain view of project managers, or leadership, the way they dealt with project managers, good, bad, and different, is the way they just think they all should behave, which at the end of the day we're managing chaos. And I would still say it's probably one of the hardest jobs in any company. And that, I know that, uh, but depending on the person at the top, they can make it kind of difficult. What I think was important for like our team specifically was trying to take the projects that we had and right size the category to the right person. And then also understand like the different group strengths and weaknesses, because we had a mix. If you remember, we had people that were really experienced. You kind of had a mix of people. Like we had the really experienced one who's done project management for years. We had ones who were brand new. We had yourself who managed really crazy complex like software integration projects where people would cry, and came in guns blazing and totally tore the doors down. And then we had people that were like literally just brand new to project, like they're what they had in their head. So it was a little bit of like, okay, let's look at everything we have and then map the right projects to the right people. And then there's also a part of like, you don't want people to be stuck on a project so they can grow. So kind of knowing what the roadmap looks like down the road, so you could give people an opportunity to do work on different projects, and they could hopefully get promoted after they get some wins and products under their belt. So, but I think the hardest part for me in that role was matching those projects to the team, and then like my hand, like it was kind of stretched. Like one was team managing that and listening to all of your like the team's feedback, and then trying to make fixes. I think Rachel, that was one thing that was great, is you'd come back to me or the team would come back to me, hey, this is really messed up, or this is processes. And I'd actually go dive into it, like, hey, how can we make it better? So I had that. And then it was like the leadership and making sure leadership understood what we were doing and that we were trying to help them. Because in the past world, people looked at project management as a roadblock, or the police, or somebody who just reported the news. So it's like, how do we turn this team into something that actually gets stuff done?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I think is so interesting and unique about the way that we kind of approached the projects there and just thinking about it, but you're not even just thinking about like there's so much context there, but you're thinking about like how does that person fit into like the organization, what does their roadmap look like, but you're also looking at like how they fit into the overall team and what the strength is of like the other legs of the project. And we've talked about this before, but like if you have one PM that's really good and an engineering team that's really good, then maybe if your product team's a little bit weak, you'd be able to sort of like the other two parties can kind of make up
Yeah.
for it. Talk a little bit about like sort of the tripod that you deal with and how you navigate that part too.
That is so, yeah. So I call that, I've used this a lot, and if anybody knows me, they're gonna be like, "Oh, yep, here it comes from Joe." It's the Jordan Pippen Rodman Chicago Bulls reference I'll use forever, which kind of dates myself, but it's back when basketball was actually good. Um, but it's like, yeah, you need the three pillars. You need a really good product manager. You need a really good R&D. Let's just call them engineer. Doesn't matter what you're working on. And then you need a really good project manager. And I still to this day think if you have all three of those, you'll always see the products get done, launched, like without like a hiccup. I won't say it's 100% perfect, but it gets pretty well. If you get two of those, they kind of like limp along, but they'll make it past the finish line. It might not be exactly on time. It might not be exactly on budget. Um, but it'll limp along. If you only have one of those, it becomes, if you have the project manager, they could pull everybody along. But if the product person can't market it properly and the R&D guy is weak, you're gonna have all these issues that you got to fix. And then similarly, we've seen it multiple times where the product person is really strong, but that also comes with a lot of chaos too, because they'll change their mind over and over, and you don't have somebody like putting the guide rails on, and the R&D guys get disgruntled, and so you need those three that kind of could talk, and when you get that, it's a really awesome thing to be on one of those teams, like where you're just it's win after win. It's kind of fun. I think
And
the heart. Yeah, sorry.
well, I was just going to say, I think that concept of sort of like the tripod that holds a project together, I do think that kind of transcends into other areas, and that's been coming up for me a lot too as I've been doing some of these IT projects. That for myself also, it's like you need that strong project manager, you need like your like IT, and knows what they're doing, and then the business side to kind of drive it from the business side. So I do think that kind of transcends into other areas, and it's funny how much that theme has come up for me as well and other.
I know it's so, and it's like it's kind of funny because depending on everybody, kind of has like those different things. You've got the person who loves to roll up their sleeves and really get in there. You've got the person who's like the master communicator. You're dealing with all these different personas. You've got the good cop, bad cop person where they want to come in and act a certain, and it's like maybe they're jockeying for a promotion or whatever it is. And then you've got some people that just want to like literally just report the news and do like the bare basics, and who knows, maybe they've got something else on the side. It's, yeah, you need that function where they're literally like well in sync, and it's tough to find, but when you got it, wow, it's cool. It makes product development a lot of fun, and it makes the team, it actually makes the rest of the team step up. It's like the rest of the team is like, oh man, this group's really cranking. Like, I don't want to be left behind. And maybe not everybody, but a good amount of them want to step up.
Well, I guess that's so true. And like that being said, I mean, you did kind of say, and I feel the same way that there's so many project managers out there, but it's still really hard to find like good ones. What do you feel like makes someone okay to good to great?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll never forget when I first got into project management, and I was like, what is this job, career, whatever it is. I think a good project manager knows, I think there's a couple of key features. One is if you have like truly an issue that's like do or die, you know how to either escalate it or know how to diffuse the bomb. Like there's a problem. You actually know how to diffuse it without it getting upper management. There's so many people who are like the boy who cried wolf and want to go cry to man. It's like, okay, can you diffuse the bomb and at least come up with a mitigation plan? Um, and sometimes there isn't one. I think there's good communication skills. I think that's actually like, I think that's like 70% of the job. Like there are people that just don't know how to communicate, whether it's in an email, whether it's to upper management, whether it's in a meeting, a review, whatever is critical. I think the other one is, you got to roll up your sleeves and get dirty with the project. Like, understand. I think one of the worst things, and I would know if I'm doing my job wrong, is if somebody came to me and said, "Oh yeah, this person's not doing so and so," or they don't know what's going on in the project and somebody else does. That's scary. Like, you should know. You should have the pulse of what's going on and kind of predict it before it happens. You got to be a great communicator. You got to diffuse the bomb. I think another one is understanding the process and the product you're working on. I think that's a lot of people. A big takeaway I always had was, and I think this is in like the PMBOK for the PMP. Like, I think it's probably the main thing I ever took away from like the main thing was that one of the first couple of chapters. One of the things it actually said is like, assess the company you're going in to and kind of like adapt yourself and be a chameleon to the company. I think that's a huge I think that's another huge skill because I think a lot of project managers come in and they think, oh, I've done it this way. This is the way I'm going to do it every company. And me and you've seen this. They will fall flat on their face because either they're too aggressive, they're too soft. So you got to kind of like adopt like what am I walking in? Like, take the first while you get assigned the project, the first 30, 60, 90, and understand like what's the environment. Are you the project manager who's coming in to break people's skulls, which some people want? Or are you the project manager who's there for emotional support? Are you the project manager to drive it? So it's like every company is a little wishy-washy and different on that. And they all have levels of that, but it's um I think you need to understand that. That's something like that one sentence is probably the most important one that ever stuck with me in my career. I think that's true in any company you go to. Like, what am I getting into? You probably see that with a bunch of your clients. Like, everybody operates differently, and what do they want from you?
Yeah, and I do think you do just kind of naturally have to tailor your approach, and even within the same organization, your approach could be different, Like if I'm working with the engineers or my specific team, I might drive them differently than how I act to another team.
Yeah,
And I might act different to them and behind closed doors than I
100%.
do, them in front of the team. I think you and I operate from the same kind of standpoint that I'm going to like fiercely protect my team. And so when I'm going out in front of like a larger group, I might protect them a little bit more, but then I might take them out back and be like, dude, what the hell?
And I think that's actually that's it. Like, that is it in a nutshell. Like, you might have to talk to the software engineer way differently than you talk to the head mechanical engineer, right? You're talking to two different types of engineers, and any engineer will get that. And then you're going to have to talk to leadership, which is a whole other you're almost like an actor. Like, you're almost trying to politically change your motivation as you talk to different people. That is a huge skill set. I mean, that is a huge skill set.
But you're like insanely good at that. Can you just at least try to quantify how do you know how far you can push it, especially with the executive leadership team? And like the team we dealt with was so fickle and like very specific. And we had like a lot of big personalities we were dealing with.
Sure.
Like how did you know and show up with the executive presence that you needed, to like
Uh,
convey the
yeah.
message or do the right thing for the product?
Yeah. I mean, first off, thank you. Sometimes I'm like, well, I appreciate that. I think I'll give this a thought. Like, I think one part of it, without jumping the gun, is the executive leadership part. I would always handle with, you got to present the facts, what you're trying to do, and do not be one of those people that try to beat around the bush. I think there's a lot of those out there, and you and I have seen it. Um, you might be able to get away with that once or twice, but you come off not genuine. I think you need to be as genuine as you could be. I don't know whether it's because I started my career in sales and like customer service esque routes, like coming right on into like the workplace. I think there's something about reading people and understanding people as an individual that helps, that just takes time. Like, I don't, it's a muscle that you kind of have to build over time. Like, I think a really good executive leader could probably see somebody walk in a room and based on body language, posturing, in the first couple sentences could probably pick them apart pretty fast. And I would say there's something similar that it takes just time to understand, like the people on your core team, to build that same rapport of how do you read that person and actually understand, like, oh, that person's the person that nobody wants to talk to and they're grumpy on every project, but we need them to get this done. Or that person's the one who, they always get their work done, but they're never going to say anything in a meeting, but they're going to come to you after the meeting and bend your ear for 15 minutes. Or there's the person that isn't going to say anything in any meeting, but they're going to send your manager a diatribe on what they liked or didn't like about you. Um, and I think you deal with that enough that you could start picking that up. And it's probably the hardest when you join a new organization, but then once you like get into the rhythm of it, then you kind of like get the feel for it. But it does take time. It's not something you just pick up right away. So I would say it was a combination of maybe a little bit of my upbringing, call it street smarts and doing sales and service. And then it's just working projects, and then like starting to pick up on it. It's not like I'm a mind reader, but you could start seeing like, oh, okay, yeah, that person's going to tell us the project's failed because he's done this 15 times before and he's been here for 30 years. So what does he know that I don't know or she know?
I I do think that that does kind of bring up a really good point, which is like, in a way, every time we get onto a core team call or get into an executive call, like we're kind of selling where we are in the plan in a
Yeah.
way. Like there's a big aspect of that in the communication.
Yeah. I think it's, you're selling where the project is. And then like, I think the most frustrating part with leadership ones is like when you truly need them to make, and we've been in these too, where you truly need somebody to make a decision or embrace reality that something is truly late or off the rails. And, you know, not the most recent at, at Weber at our time, but maybe previous, um, you'd be presenting, the facts as you'd call it, and they wouldn't want to accept them. And in those situations, I think there's like an embrace reality moment. Like, hey, this is not going to happen. Like, we're not going to hit the date, or we're not going to hit our target. So, like, what can we do? I think that's what you're always kind of looking.
Yeah, and that's such a hard place to be as a project manager. And I do think that's probably what does set someone apart from being okay to being great, is like knowing, hey, this is one of those times where I might need to pull that executive leader aside and have like a bigger come to Jesus conversation about what is happening here. Because a lot of people do shy away from those harder conversations or don't really know, like, now's the time to let it ride and now's the time to step in and push it forward.
Yeah, and you specifically were great at that. Like, I mean, that was like a Rachel superpower. Like, you'd be like, "Hey, this is truly messed up." And then it's like, "Okay, let's figure out what we got to do next," and we would attack it accordingly. I don't know how many times like people project management is a truly hard job. Like, there are people like if you pass the baton to the person next to you, you say, "Okay, run the core team. I got to run to the bathroom for 15 minutes." Like they would look like a deer in headlights. They would just be like, "What? Wait, I got to do what? Like, wait, is there meeting notes? Is there something like, what am I doing? Like, do I just read this sentence?" Like, and they just, there's like a panic. But like, we do have those really hard executive conversations, and it's not fun. So like, there's, there's, there are those hard conversations. And I think the more you do them, it's the easier it is. I always think it's just, how's the reaction from the leadership team? And I think that's actually a good staple of the leadership team. Like, if they can handle it and they can respond well, you got a good leadership team. If they
That's
can't,
so great.
if they can't, maybe it's time to look.
I do think there's something there about just how do companies support project managers? Because, I mean, even in our time at Weber, we saw the kind of perspective on that shift a lot. And I think that's something that people don't put enough stock into, especially when dealing with any kind of like job transitions,
Yeah.
because, your life's going to be easy or hard depending on the corporate perspective on how they view project management. And obviously, the preference is to be in an environment where the project manager gets a lot of like positional power, a lot of like respect in the organization. But, kind of towards the end of our reign, it felt like that perspective at Weber had shifted quite a bit, and project management started to take a little bit like of a lesser
Yeah.
role per se.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I really think it comes down to um it comes from the leadership support, like how they I've truly believe it's not only like the leadership support of the project managers. I feel like this is something like whenever you go to one of those project management seminars, this is a topic at all times. Like somebody brings this up, but I think it's the support of leadership. And then I don't hear anybody talk about this, but I think this is what it truly is. I think it really is the people who are in leadership. What was their perspective of project management in their career as they got into the leadership role? So, like, for example, there were people who really like thought project management ruled the world. When we were there was other people that literally they have a different definition of what project management is in their head, right? So it might be, oh, I was in an organization and they're just the help. They're the they're the ones who help coordinate samples and schedule meetings and they send out notes and they kind of just, they just do their thing. And then there's other ones where it's like, no, I worked at a company where they were like really good project managers and like they got everything done because everybody else was extremely, just not up to snuff. So I think it's I think it's a support from leadership, and I truly believe it's like what was their perspective of project management throughout their careers. And if you've got an organization where they really respect that role and they understand how much you could do, oh, it's great. But if you've got the group where it's I don't really understand, what they do, and are they really just reporting the news? And are they? I mean, it becomes this chaotic churn because you're trying to sell them not only you're trying to sell them you're not only trying to get the project done but you're selling them on your role, you're selling them on your value to the company, where I could probably argue there's other groups in the organization that are pretty useless in comparison. So and like you probably could have made a product, given it to the project management team and had different parties just step completely away and would have got it out the door. So
That
that's
is so true. I do think just coming out of that and kind of talking about how important leaders are, it does bring a good point up that they can be supporters or big detractors. And you and I have had some hard projects where the leaders came in and like put a kibosh on things or derailed things completely. Tell me a little bit about other experiences that you've had, or maybe we could just share a story of like how a leader could
yeah.
completely derail project success.
If there's anybody listening, I've got two good ones. If anybody listens to this, there's two, and I'll let them connect the dots to the project that they are. I'll never forget one where we had to present that we were late by, I think we needed 3 months to launch it. Now, spoiler alert, this is also, and you know this more than anybody, someone in leadership could pound their fist and move up the date. But usually if the PM's like, hey, this is 3 months and you have the experience and if you launched enough projects, you pretty much know that's the date, but everybody could be in false denial. Um, so we had one literally where we presented to leadership, like, hey, here's all the facts. And this was early on. Uh, and it was like, yeah, we're like 3 months out. Like we didn't start early enough. Usually that's usually a cause of most of the project chaos. You didn't start early enough. People were playing around in the front end, and then you're scrambling to get the product out the door. Um, so we were 3 months late, and I'll never forget that the leadership team's like, yeah, no, you guys got to figure out a way to take 4 months out of the schedule. So like we're 3 months late, but we're going to pull it in by 4 months. Now we did some crazy Hail Mary pass stuff and spent money and I would say we got somewhere in between that. But at the end of the day, if you truly look like what success looked like, it was still 3 months late. There is another one I'll never forget where, um, this was in a past life where we were working on a project and we just had not done all the reliability testing. And I'm not talking like a regulatory compliance piece, like it's compliant, product's good, safe, et cetera. But we just didn't do it for the longevity. Like people were cutting corners, and you call that stuff out and you're like, hey, this is not going to work out. And all of a sudden, you know, stuff hits the fan after year one of launch. And it's like, hey, we need to fix this. Like we got to change. And at that point, I had already left, but it's just funny because you had it there, right? It was the giant number one risk on your risk register. People have to, and I get it though too. From a leadership side, they need to take a chance too. Do you make revenue this year, or do you wait till it's perfect? So it's a healthy balance.
Yeah.
How about good ones that you could think of without getting too?
Well, well, I was just thinking of, the types of decisions that we dealt with. I thought were so interesting, at Weber specifically, just because, and I think this happens for others as well. The types of things that we were deciding were so opinion based that there's not necessarily like a right answer, and so it's kind of complicated to navigate, trying
You had a
to
lot of those.
get,
Yeah.
yeah, I know, try to get to the like decision even though the answer might not be obvious. Or as a project manager, I almost like don't care what the decision is because it's more important that we get one and move forward than it is, deciding the right thing. But we were dealing with things like the char marks aren't brown enough, or like the knob color is wrong and we don't like that anymore, or just the most fickle, kind of random things
I mean,
that
yeah,
stakeholders,
I
cared about.
remember Paul Hunt had a great one where me and him were trying to decide for a part whether it was going to be plastic or metal, and we brought in like samples of both, and there was no decision made with the exception of let's go figure out how people feel about those materials. And at the end of the day, one of the great product managers I worked with used to have a great line. If Greg Highsmith listens to this, he was a great guy. He was like, at the end of the day, does the consumer really care? Like, are they gonna spend extra $1 more whether you pick the one or the other? And I could tell you right now, we ended up going with what everybody in the team thought we were gonna do, but instead we had to deviate and do this whole research study and that. And at the end of the day, I go back to like what Greg always says, like, did the consumer, will they pay the extra dollar, or could we just pick the thing and gone?
Does
It's great.
anyone care? Yeah, right.
Yep.
I want to like just dive in a little bit more into the kind of changing nature, because what I think is so interesting about these product development projects is we're technically creating something new, and we're technically like working through challenges that are not necessarily able to be fully planned like in waterfall. Like I can't put into my project plan, let's plan for a big crisis to happen at this part of the project, but yet we're still like kind of held to meet these timelines. Can you just talk a little bit about like how do you project plan for uncertainty
Yeah.
or trying to figure that kind of stuff out?
Yeah, I feel like companies either do a couple good things. One is they know, like, I feel like if you've always done like the same type of product, you could kind of build some buffer in, and people will know off the bat, and you'll know, and you could kind of plan for success and give yourself some padding. I think that's the most common one. Um, I think for ours, when it looks like the waterfall versus the agile piece, this is one where I struggled a lot. Where I think we used to call it, when I was at Life, they actually had a good way of doing it because they developed products that always were software and hardware from like the beginning of their creation of products. But they used to kind of have it where, at the key milestones, they were very crystal clear on what the product needed to do, software, hardware wise. It's always a little bit of a chicken and the egg, but they at least would, I would say, within a couple weeks would have had the hardware and software. I think we were learning that like as we were going a little, like the we were fixing the plane while it was flying a little bit at times. Um, yeah, I think the buffer helps. I think I truly believe it. Like you got to start the projects earlier on time. Like I think there's a lot of people that lollygag in the front, that aren't, they're key stakeholders, but they're not making the critical decisions. And then boom, you're off to the races and you're like, wait a minute, what happened those last 4 months? It's like, well, we were messing around with the design and we're messing around with the features and we're doing research. And, you know, sometimes that's needed, but that eats up all the buffer. It eats up all the buffer.
No, that's so true. Or feeling like, I think we've dealt with this a lot, feeling like you have so much time when you actually, if you kind of take the PM lens of it and look at the critical
Yeah, you have
path
no
and look like,
time.
yeah, look ahead, you're like, we're actually already behind. I don't know why everybody's chilling because
I don't,
we gotta
I don't
go.
think, I don't think I've ever had a project like in my life where I built a timeline and I was like, I feel great about this. I think you build a timeline and you're like, yeah, that's tight. Like, but I mean, that's also why they're
Every
painful.
time.
But like, I don't think I've ever built one where I was like, all right, this is gonna be slam dunk. Like this, they got enough time that it just never works that way.
It never feels cozy. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
so funny.
especially when someone downplays how like small a project is. If they're like, oh yeah, like this is a slam dunk. We could do this in like 6 months, and it never was 6 months. It'd be like 9 months. And it was just
Minimum. Yeah.
easy.
Carry the one.
Yep, Carrie. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Just to switch gears a little bit, but when we're talking about all these projects, and especially when we're dealing with product development, like the company forecast could be based on this. There's so much pressure that goes into like delivering
Yeah.
on time or the project's doing well. Can you talk a little bit about how you operate under pressure, but then also how you don't just fall into being like a drill sergeant or, just like you're saying, kind of banging the hammer
Yeah.
to try to get things over the finish line?
My demeanor changed when you asked me this one. Was I was like, oh, that's such a tough one. So yeah, I never, ever, ever, ever in my career took the drill sergeant like, hey, beat him over the head role. I'm not that person. Like in my core, I think some people love being that person. Like, I mean, you could be strict without being a drill sergeant and get stuff done. And I think the teams embrace that more, especially when they're burnt out. Uh, I think the most important thing, this kind of goes back to what people think the project managers do. When you're having something like you were mentioning like, hey, the forecast is messed up or supply chain, like we were dealing with crazy lead times, right? It was the COVID where shipping lead times were literally growing by, weeks and months. Um, there's things like that where I think you got to keep a good project manager keeps pulse of that and knows what's going on and can kind of see. I also think there's an opportunity in organizations to have the other groups, for example, like forecasting, supply chain, jump in and do their part to help save the day. I think the problem a lot of times is, well, the project managers on the project, they're going to figure it out. They'll land it here and, we'll get the exact quantity we want. And I think there's a couple different ways you could look at it. I think, and you probably have experienced this too. There's some people that literally are like, hey, once you start production, the project manager's done. Like he got it into production, you got to move it on. I think there's others that have to see it through to like it's actually arrived here. You've done some auditing, you've done quality audits. I'm more familiar with that side. But I know companies that do both. I think it's important to kind of keep a pulse on that. I think we struggled with, if you remember, we had, supply chain issues. There was parts that we're trying to get on time. We were trying to get, uh, forecasting is always hard, especially during those times where there was huge spikes in what everybody wanted and then kind of fell. Not to mention then it blew up again because everybody then realizes it's a great product and then so I think a good PM keeps an eye on all of that stuff and communicates at least the best you can to the vendor suppliers. You got to keep the ball rolling, even if it's the 2 times a week core team meeting versus, fully in all the time. I think there's others though, and I'll never forget. I've had times where someone was like, well, you're the project manager. You should know exactly all the containers when they're arriving, how many are on the shipment. And I always would find that kind of funny because I'd be like, well, isn't there like a whole logistics team that gets paid to kind of know some of that detail? So I think there were hard conversations I remember having to try to make sure some of the other teams stepped up because let's face it, if the project manager's running everything, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, well, they'll just figure that out too. And that would drive me nuts. That's like telling the product,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's like telling the product manager they're supposed to know the entire marketing strategy and social media. It's like they're not going to be able to, they might
Yeah,
know.
like you gotta draw the line somewhere
You
for
got to draw the
sure,
line.
for sure.
So I think my best answer to that would be is like you got to keep your pulse on it and try not to lose your mind the best you can.
For sure.
Keep your sanity. Keep your sanity.
Yeah, or try to,
Or try
exactly.
to. Yeah. I definitely, yeah. There were some trying times on those.
I kind of want to like draw the parallel between you mentioned PMBOK like earlier, and kind of project management teachings versus what happens in real life, and I kind of just want to like tie back to that a little bit. But there's a lot of folks that might be listening that are new to PM or just starting their journey in project management in general, and could you talk a little bit about, you have so much practical experience when it comes to applying like that type of knowledge in the real world. Do you have any advice for anyone listening?
Is it for them getting their PMP or just like real world advice?
I think tying like teachings or kind of traditional knowledge to what actually happens in the real world.
Yeah. So I think the PMBOK is
That's
great for,
that's the just for anybody who doesn't know, that's the project management body of knowledge which Project Management Institute publishes, which is kind of the PM holy grail.
yeah.
Carry
It's like,
on.
and it reads like the Encyclopedia Britannica for those who remember that. So it's not a fun, get the Cliff Notes version if you
Yeah.
want to read it. Um, I think that book is very like, hey, if you were doing a construction project, what I love about that, I'll say the pros and then the real life experience. The pros of that is it's like, hey, if you were doing this ginormous project, like you were building a building and you had to assign the specific resources and have to understand, and there's probably people that are listening to that actually do that exact, like where they own every single resource, they know exactly when they transition on, they transition off. um, I think that is super useful to know that's how companies work. Some companies work because you might be at a point in your career, if you decide to stay in this in time, where you may experience a company where they want you to truly resource plan and plan for that. um I think the practical side comes back to like what I was saying with just you need to know the organization and know what you're getting at and understand, like, do you really, for example, like I still have not seen a great way that people have resource planned in, the 15 plus years in product development. Like, it's usually done in different ways. Uh, I would say it's cool to know what a perfect world looks like and read that and understand that, but like in reality, it's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be dirty. I would say trust your gut a lot. Like if you know something feels wrong, it probably is. I would say that's a big truth. I would say also don't, don't get discouraged just because you start a project and it's backwards or it's upside down or you're not getting traction for the first 2 or 3 months. Um, that's kind of normal. That's just product development. It's kind of fun. It's kind of messy, but that's the whole part of it. Like at the end of the day, you come out with this cool product that people see on a shelf and they're like, wow, I worked on that. Or in whatever it is, whether it's a piece of software that you like, it's something that you built and you should be proud of that. But I think a lot of PMs get discouraged or they get so wrapped up in like, wait a minute, this did not go perfect. Like I should have had, and it's just like, that's just not the real world. People are resource constraints. There's budget cuts. There's all kinds of people are, taking resources to get other projects that make more money. There's changes in scope as a competitor launch something that's better than your, like there's just so much that gets thrown at you that you kind of got to roll with the punches and do your best and keep your sanity. And that's hard. It's hard. A lot of people aren't comfortable with change. Like people don't handle change very well.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. There's the real world doesn't always play out how the textbook says it will.
No, no. And I mean, it does a great job of doing that, but God, I don't even know what a version they are on now. I think it's on 8 or 9 or.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for being here and sharing your
Yeah,
infinite wisdom. I'm so excited and really appreciate the time. It's also so fun to go back and rehash some of our,
this was a lot
old
of fun.
stories. Yeah,
I
it's
didn't think I
great.
didn't think I would get so excited to talk about project management, but I'm like, wow, this is really good dialogue.
We promised that we would nerd out about project management, and this, boy, did you deliver, Joe. Boy, did you deliver. So just to kind of wrap up, do you want to share any, if there's anything exciting that you're working on right now, or how maybe people can connect with you if they wanted to keep this conversation going?
Yeah, so I would say for sure reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, so you could find me under I think it's officially Joseph Ciway because I think somebody actually stole Joe Ciway, which is kind of strange. But so you can find me under Joseph Ciway on LinkedIn and feel free to connect. I love to touch base. I love anything product development. It's fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That was Big Project Energy. We're really excited to keep having conversations like this and just be talking about project management and projects and leadership in ways that I feel like aren't really talked about anymore, or haven't really been gone down that path. So yeah, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thanks for having me.